The U.S. ambassador to the European Union is testifying to the congressional inquiry into Donald Trump's impeachment. Gordon Sondland said the president ordered diplomats to involve his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, in discussions about Ukraine. Let's look more closely at who Gordon Sondland is, the wealthy owner of a hotel chain. He gave $1 million towards Donald Trump's inauguration. President Trump nominated Sondland as the U.S. ambassador to the EU in May last year. He's being questioned about any role he played in encouraging Ukraine to investigate Trump's political rival Joe Biden and Biden's son. Sondland exchanged a series of text messages with another U.S. diplomat that have become central to allegations that Trump withheld aid from Ukraine as a bargaining chip to encourage the Biden investigation. Let's bring in Heidi Jocastro. She's joining us more from Washington, D.C. So he's finally appeared in front of the Congressional Committee after being barred from the State Department. It must be a significant testimony he's giving. Heidi, talk us through it.
That's right, and he started speaking a few hours ago. His testimony may last long as previous witnesses have, and he did say that he was happy to be back today after he had been barred at the last minute, according to his prepared statement, from appearing a week ago due to the State Department. But now that he's been subpoenaed, he is here in person. And he is really a central witness into this key question about whether Trump, or what the motivation was of the president to withhold that military assistance to Ukraine, because the circumstances would make it appear that he was using that as leverage to get the Ukrainians to help him dig up dirt on Joe Biden. Well, Sondland, in his prepared opening, got right to the heart of that. He said, "I do not recall any discussions with the White House on withholding U.S. security assistance from Ukraine in return for the president's 2020 re-election campaign, in return for assistance for that." However, he says that if that were the case, that it would be wrong. And he says that it was from Trump himself who said no quid pro quo during that text exchange, which has been released to the public. In that exchange, another ambassador said this is crazy to link U.S. foreign policy assistance with help with a political campaign of the president, to which Sondland quickly responded, "The president says no quid pro quo." And now we know that's because Trump said so himself. Sondland also said it felt like it was wrong to be directed to deal with U.S. foreign policy through the president's personal attorney, but that he complied because it was the president's request. And finally, he said when that personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, brought up 2016 election meddling, brought up Burisma, which is the name of the Ukrainian company on which Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, sat on the board, Sondland claims that he had no idea that this was even connected. He said he had no idea that Biden had a stake in this company, despite press reports that had that all over the newspapers during that time. However, Sondland said he simply didn't know. He didn't ask any questions about it. And it appears to be a very self-protective opening statement that details some very self-protective actions. And now investigators are really asking, well, what did Sondland feel like he needed protection from?
Okay, Heidi, we'll leave it there. Thank you for that update from Washington. Let's take this on with Joel Rubin. He's the president of the Washington Strategy Group. That's an advisory firm specializing in national security as well as foreign policy. Thanks for being with us again on the Al Jazeera News Hour. So we are getting his remarks from his prepared testimony, Joel, and what Gordon Sondland is expected to say is that he was directed by President Trump to work with Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine. We know that Giuliani's record on Ukraine is now being questioned, to say the least. How damning do you think this testimony is going to be?
Well, I served at the State Department and also in Congress, and I can tell you that this testimony is a major inflection point right now for the impeachment inquiry that the House has launched. And for President Trump, this is damning because this is one of his top political appointees at the State Department, a man who gave $1 million to his election campaign, essentially purchasing this ambassadorship. And now he is spilling the beans about how the president was directly involved in the accusations that the whistleblower, and we need to remember this only started a few weeks ago, that the whistleblower identified as deeply problematic. And that's what House impeachment inquiry is underway. And they really have found a smoking gun in the human form of Ambassador Sondland.
Yeah, and it's not only Sondland. We've heard from a number of Trump's people throughout this week. So how significant is it that we're now hearing from his own people and previous employees?
So the White House and the State Department and Secretary Pompeo attempted to keep this information out of the hands of Congress and out of the public eye of the American people, and demanded that these witnesses would not become witnesses, but they were outmaneuvered both by the attorneys for these individuals who were put in legal jeopardy because the House issued subpoenas to get them there. So the dam is broken. Diplomats are going up. Former ambassador to Ukraine, Yovanovitch. We had Kurt Volker, another senior appointee ambassador to Ukraine. We've had multiple senior officials who have quit. But this is the most interesting one because Ambassador Sondland has not quit, and he still testified despite the White House and the State Department saying no. So clearly, they all want to get the story out now. They are afraid of being themselves in legal jeopardy. And for the president, this is a very bad day.
So what does this then mean if you look at the sort of bigger picture and for the benefit of our international audience who might be wondering, well, what happens next in this whole impeachment inquiry?
Well, what this will do procedurally is this will help build the case not only internally for the committees doing the inquiry, but also for their interest in expanding the inquiry to other individuals who have been identified through these multiple hours of testimony. Remember, what we're talking about right now is his written remarks. So he has provided written remarks and he'll read them, but then he'll do a question and answer for multiple hours afterwards. We likely won't see that. Maybe we'll hear some leaks, but there's a lot more going on. And this is likely to accelerate the impeachment process in the House. It essentially means that the president is looking at an impeachment vote before the end of the year by the House of Representatives, potentially they're saying even by Thanksgiving, and then having this be pushed to the Senate.
Yeah.
But that, after all of this investigation, really pulls out more information.
Yeah, and speaking of the Senate, I mean, if articles of impeachment are passed, then this does go to the Senate, where Republicans have to walk away from Trump.
Yes.
But are you seeing any sign of that happening at all? Because according to the latest poll by the Washington Post, they're seeing that no Republican senators so far, and this is last week actually, publicly support impeaching Trump, and only a number of them were unequivocally behind him still.
We haven't seen it yet, and in many ways they're able to duck. We have not seen many Republican senators, other than perhaps Lindsey Graham and Ron Johnson, publicly defending the president. So they're able to avoid this for the moment. But there are several, and we have to look at a couple of lanes of structure for them. There are several to look at. Mitt Romney, for example, has publicly criticized the president's behavior, and then the Republican senators who are up for re-election in 2020 and are in Democratic-leaning states like Susan Collins, for example, or Cory Gardner in Colorado. Those are the weak potential senators, and it's possible after that, and if the House sends over articles of impeachment that really does and do have damning information, that we'll see a lot more public pressure. We're already seeing public opinion shift towards impeachment, over 50% now supporting removal from office in some polls. So the political heat is only going to get higher on these Republican senators.
All right, Joel Rubin, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us from Washington.